everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Hi guys. I don't know about you guys, but I have over the last couple of months felt a little bit overwhelmed by everything that has been going on in the world. And for me personally, I have found myself kind of getting in these cycles of turning to sugar and food. And one moment I wanted to do a sugar detox. I was going to do a video around that, and I was like, I feel like that's not the answer either for what's happening to me right now. I think it's a little bit deeper than that. So in today's video, I have an amazing and informative and helpful conversation with a registered dietitian and nutritionist. Her name is Marissa Meshulam. I'll put her Instagram so you guys can follow her. We talk about everything from intuitive eating to why we turn to sugar to all of our relationships with food and diet culture and kind of unlearning a lot of the things that all of us all over the world have learned about food and dieting and what we should do and shouldn't do and good foods and bad foods, and the list goes on and on and on. I think it's really helped me kind of reframe the way I feel and think about food, and I hope it does the same for you. Let's get started on that portion of the video. Hello, Marissa. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Well, thank you for taking the time to chat with me today and share some of your expertise with us. I think what will be helpful is, why don't you tell everyone who you are, what you do, what your expertise is, and all that.
My name is Marissa Meshulam. I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist. I currently live and practice here in New York City. I have a virtual private practice in which I help people kind of ditch fad diets for good and instead embrace mindful eating, which is something I'm sure we're going to touch on today. And really, I teach people how to learn to eat to feel their best.
So Marissa, what I have been struggling with is, and I think a lot of people are struggling with this, we're all staying home right now, we're out of our routines. And I think the stress and just that lack of routine has me turning towards food and sugar. So where do I start from here?
You know, our lives are so different than they were 6 months ago or 3 months ago even. So obviously food is going to look a little bit different, but I think there are some important things you can do to make sure that you still feel good, right? We need to shift the focus on, if we're lucky enough where food is something we can control right now, let's make it work in our favor. Let's eat foods that make us feel good. And we'll get into it a little more, but that doesn't always have to look like salads and salmon. Sometimes it's ice cream, but it's how do you find the balance of both? And I think that's where people really struggle. And that's where mindful eating comes in. I would start with the absolute basics of good nutrition.
I thought you said with abs. I was like, abs? No, what?
I mean, if you're lucky enough that that's what you're working with, that's great. But I think we can all forego that for now. Make sure that you are having consistent meals. So what I hear of a lot of times, and maybe this is something you've been dealing with too, is when you're at home, since you have access to the kitchen at all times of day, you're not really sitting down for breakfast anymore. You're not sitting down for lunch. Instead, it's, I'm kind of hungry. I'll have a handful of this. I'll have a handful of that. But you're never truly satisfied. Is that something that you've noticed?
Yeah, I definitely feel like the lack of routine and even just the lack of the normal foods that I typically eat, because now I'm in the suburbs, I'm in a house, I don't have the sweet greens at my fingertips, and that's just the spoiled New Yorker in me that just wants all of those things delivered and stuff. But yeah, I have felt myself kind of grazing throughout the day, and then I never feel really satisfied, and then I just want to satisfy the sweet tooth, or I have that crash and I'm just okay, coffee, and then I'm gonna have some sweet kettle corn, and then I'm then it's dinner time and I'm I don't want to eat salmon.
Right.
Yeah. It's just a mess. It's a mess.
Yeah, it is a mess, and it's a mess for all of us. So do yourself a favor and try to normalize food as much as possible. And by that, I mean get back on some sort of loose schedule where you do have meals. If you're eating these foods a ton of veggies, a ton of healthy fats, you're going to be getting in all those key nutrients that your body needs that are filled with the protein, fat, and fiber. Those three things really help slow down your blood sugar response, so you never get really high highs and really low lows. Those low lows of your blood sugar are what then cause you to crave that added sugar, that quick energy that our bodies get. So instead, making sure that you're getting a good balance throughout the day can be really important.
Is there a scientific reason for when stress hits us, why we crave certain things? What is going on there?
There is a scientific reason. Our brains crave dopamine and serotonin, these feel-good hormones. When we're really stressed, we're looking for those feel-good hormones, and carbs, aka sugar, are our body's quickest source of energy. meaning that we can quickly take these simple carbohydrates, things like cookies, soda even, any sort of added sugar. We can take those quick carbs, quickly turn them into energy, and quickly get that dopamine, serotonin boost. It's biology. That's the reason that you're craving these things more. But what we can do is making sure that you're eating enough of the good for you foods that's keeping you physically full so that you don't have these intense, crazy cravings.
I think for me, what's the hardest thing is when I'm having those cravings, kind of trying to take that moment to pause. Because I think in those moments of stress or high energy, I don't want to take a moment to pause to be like, you know, what's actually going on here? It almost makes me want to just act right away and just kind of soothe whatever's happening there.
That's very, very normal. I think this is where we can talk a little bit about, have you ever heard of the habit loop? Basically, there's this loop our bodies go through. So we have, and these are how habits are formed. And eating out of boredom, out of sadness, out of all of those things, frustration is, you know, a habit. So we need to figure out how to fix that habit. We first have to understand what is happening. So we have a cue. So may that cue be boredom, may that cue be sadness, may that cue be stress. Then we have a routine, right? And usually that's mindless eating. And then we have a reward. And the reward is that dopamine that I just mentioned. The thing is, to break a habit and to change a habit, we need to get in at the routine. So the cue is always going to be there. You're going to have moments of stress. You're going to have moments of sadness. You're going to have moments of frustration. And we still want you to end up with dopamine. There's no, you know, we're not trying to get rid of that. However, the routine, which is mindless eating, isn't really helping you, right? You're not truly honoring that emotion that's going on. So instead, we need to find a new routine that can give you that same dopamine kick. And I can give you an example. For instance, I have one client who is always eating out of boredom. She's understood the cue is boredom. Her routine is going for a snack. Now, we got in at the routine level, and instead, when she feels that boredom and she knows she's not physically hungry, we have her take a 5-minute walk. Now, if it's not nice outside, we've even found the way she walks the stairs in her building or at work, wherever she may be. But having that new routine that gives her that same reward, right? Exercise gives your brain that same dopamine, serotonin rush that we're looking for, can really help take that pause. So I would encourage you to think about, you know, what is the emotion going on and what is a new routine? Do you think that would be something you could try?
That definitely is. I kind of like the way you framed that, like when you said, you know, by eating, you're not necessarily honoring the emotion that's actually happening there. I think that's a good way of thinking about it, because you're like basically trying to solve A with C, you know, like not right.
Right, the math doesn't add up. Food can be a coping mechanism, right? It's there for a reason. It is okay once in a while to turn to food if that makes you feel, because it does give you a short-term sense of satisfaction, right? But we're playing the long game here. If you're constantly trying to fix the loneliness with ice cream, it's not going to fix the loneliness. It might give you a short burst of dopamine, but in the end, you're probably going to end up feeling worse. But maybe you fix that loneliness by calling a friend for 15 minutes. You do something that's actually addressing the emotion. That's one of the biggest things about mindful eating, is really acknowledging what's going on. Once you practice these things, you're going to start noticing, hey, I'm not hungry. I'm actually just bored. So what could I do that's going to give me some stimulation? And I know that food is just going to fill that hole for about 4 seconds, and then it doesn't really fit. So what's the point? Another thing I'm seeing a lot during quarantine is that people's sleep schedules are really off. I don't know if you've experienced this at all. Yeah, I feel like people are either going to bed really early because there's nothing else to do, and then they're waking up earlier, or vice versa. You know, they're just staying up because, hey, I don't have to get out of bed and go to work in the morning. Just a lot of change there. But sleep can really affect our hormones, specifically our hunger hormone. When we don't get enough sleep, our bodies are then the next day craving quick energy, and quick energy is sugar. So those simple carbohydrates, which is why the next day you'll crave more sweets. I don't know, have you ever noticed that on a night?
Oh, yes.
I read a study recently that showed that people who got a poor night's sleep the night before were more likely to eat an extra 600 calories the next day. Now, I don't normally like focusing on calories, but it's a good...
But just as a...
Yeah, it just really, it shows it really affects your hunger hormones. It turns up your ghrelin, which is the hormone that tells you that you're hungry. It actually turns down your leptin, which is your full hormone. So it really messes with us.
When I don't get enough sleep, my decision making is so poor. Like my brain is just like, I don't want to think about it. Just give me the cheeseburger. Clearly.
No, I think that's really fair, and it's really true. A lot of times, although I'm a nutritionist and dietitian, I'm talking to people about, are you sleeping? Because if you're not sleeping, we got to start there. You know, I said earlier, the basics of nutrition. This is the basics of wellness. We got to make sure you're sleeping.
Right. What are your thoughts around when you do turn to food or you eat a certain something? Like, I feel like for myself, what I've been trying to get better about is not having so many rules around food, right? You know, when I was much younger, I was like, I don't eat, you know, this, and this. Like, I don't know. I've gotten a lot better with age, but then sometimes what I do still deal with is when I do indulge in something, then there's like this kind of wave of guilt or feeling like I shouldn't have done that, or like, I'll do this in the morning, like, you know, I'll go for a long run. Those kind of thought patterns. I'm always kind of trying
so
to
there's a lot of things there. Totally hear you. It's something I hear all the time. The first thing I tell everyone is you do so many things during the day that make you a morally good or bad person. But the food you ate is just not one of them. So really, and you have to relearn that, right? Because society and diet culture tells us that, hey, you ate a salad, you're good. You had French fries today, you're bad. That's just not true. It's not true at all. And the truth is, research even shows that the guilt surrounded by food like that is probably just going to make the issue worse. And the stress hormones are actually probably worse for your health than that one thing of French fries. So I would start there, is really trying to relearn that food is not morally good and bad. However, foods do make you feel good or bad, right? We know that after a weekend of burgers and French fries and pizza, you're probably not feeling your ultimate best at the end of that weekend. After a day of like really great veggies and healthy fats and protein, you feel awesome. The question isn't like, can I have it? It's how will I feel after I have it? So kind of reframing the food around that. And then one other little thing that I'll say based on what you said is we got to shift the focus of exercise, right? Yeah. We got to exercise because it feels good. Walk because you can. You should never be exercising to work off the food you ate. We need food to survive. You always deserve that food. A lot of reframing the way you think.
Something that I've been working on like for years, I worked out to burn off something. Just disconnecting those two alone is hard.
This is not easy work. And you know, the spiraling effect. Don't carry the guilt into your next meal. Don't restrict at your next meal, because if you restrict, you're going to end up binging again later. So instead, just giving your body what it actually needs, which is those nourishing meals. And I encourage you to think about how one, less healthy meal makes you feel versus a day of them. I always talk about the Sunday effect. Sunday's the day, a lot of people were eating differently on the weekends. You were probably drinking more, and it comes to Sunday, and Sunday can go one of two ways. A lot of times Sunday morning, you wake up and you are hungover. So maybe you get a bagel or you go to the diner. Totally okay. But what you could do next on the Sunday can really change how you feel for the rest of the week. So I like to call it like a Sunday reset. Instead of after you had the bagel being like, I already ate bad today, right? I feel like crap. I'm just going to lay on the couch. Let's order Chinese food for dinner. Now let's get Van Leeuwen because like we already ate Chinese food and a bagel. What's the difference? Well, there's probably a huge difference in how you feel. You could easily have that bagel Sunday morning and be like, okay, that felt good. It's been a long weekend. Let's go for a walk. Let's get sweet green for dinner. Let's cook tonight. Let's lay off the alcohol. And you will feel significantly better starting that Monday morning, starting that week, if you paused after the one meal.
I totally do that. Like, I'm like, all right, well, I'm at this point now, so I might as well get it all out of my system in one day. I'm like, where did I come up with this awful logic?
And it's not you, right? Diets tell us, hey, on Monday, you could not eat at all and lose 5 pounds real fast. And then what? You gain it back and you do it all over again. That's why diets really don't work. But it's really hard for people to swallow that pill because we want them to work, because we still live in a society that's telling us we need to look a certain way. And things are changing, which I think is really cool. Still slowly. And we still grew up with diet culture being predominant. And especially in the industry you're in, that's huge.
Totally. I mean, I feel like it was something, especially when I was younger, I just was way more tuned into that. Like once I reached a point where I was like, oh, if I eat like this, and this instead of like McDonald's and Subway, I look better in like a week. Like, which is true, especially when you're like 17, like 16, your body like changes so quickly. And I was like, okay, like I can manipulate the way that I look with food. And that discovery alone was like a spiral for me. But then I like created all these weird rules and boundaries and things. And also I think those rules that may work, or things or schools of thought when you're that young, don't work, you know, when you're older and your body's changing as it's supposed to. You know, you can't hold yourself to the same standards for your whole entire life. It's exhausting.
It's beyond exhausting. And that's really interesting what you said about what kind of got your interest. I don't want like young girls to have to go through that again. And I think that's kind of up to us now to show people that that's not the way,
Totally.
you know? And also I like what you said about bodies changing, because they do change. I have clients come in and they'll be like, if they're like, you know, I'm eating crappy every day, I really feel lethargic, my body doesn't feel right. Maybe you could lose a few pounds through mindful eating, and that's okay. But at the same time, if you're already feeling great and you're making nutritious food choices, and the only thing that's off to you is a number on the scale, then the number on the scale isn't the problem. It's something in your head that's the problem.
Yeah, I think once I kind of let go of the idea of like needing to be at a certain weight or eating a certain way, the freedom of that alone, I feel like when I allowed myself more freedom in that space, it just like opened up my mind to focus on other things more. Like I never realized how much food and weight, how much mental capacity that was taking up for me. Like it's crazy. Like I feel like as women, there's so many other things that we could be like doing and tackling and being productive about. And I was like, I'm literally just obsessed with myself and my body and my food and like what I'm gonna eat, and that I ate this, this, and this. And it's like once you free up that space, there's so much more room for great stuff. Literally anything else.
The amount of headspace that dieting can take up, and you know, and we're saying just women, it does happen in men too, especially now. First of all, there are no food police. That's a principle of intuitive eating. Like, forget the food police. They don't exist. There's no one coming around telling you that you can or can't eat that. And if you have people in your life that are doing that, then maybe we need to work with them too.
Yeah.
There should be no food police. So learning that there are no rules, and the only rule you should be following with food is listen to your body. Your body is so much smarter than you know. Kind of just pausing to realize, okay, it's just food. Now, at the same time, it's just food, but it does have a lot of power to make you feel good. So let's use it to make you feel good, right? I'm a dietitian. I love the idea of the way that you eat can give you all this energy, can make your body feel stronger. Let's focus on that and less on the weight.
I feel like we all need to adopt this way of thinking. I did get into the habit of, I went on the Halo Top train for a while. I was like obsessed with it. I was like, I can eat the whole pint. Right. It tastes good. But then when you have the real ice cream, it actually does not taste good. Yeah. What are your thoughts around, you know, these sort of substitutes for bad food?
The substitutes don't really give you what you're actually looking for. So you just said you could eat the whole jar of, you know, that fake ice cream. You can eat the whole jar of that fake ice cream because you're constantly craving more. Whereas if you had a pint of Ben & Jerry's or Van Leeuwen, you would be able to stop at like, you know, maybe not a serving, but you would be able to stop before the pint was finished. That's because it's actually satisfying your craving. So I always encourage people to choose quality over quantity. Don't make a chocolate chip cookie with flax seeds and things that just aren't going to satisfy you. Instead, have the real thing and have a little bit of it. And really notice how much you actually need to satisfy your craving. So a lot of this artificial sweetener stuff, it just actually, it messes with your gut microbiome. When your gut's not healthy and out of whack, there's actually bacteria in your gut that are then craving more sugar. So it makes you crave more sugar later in the day. And these fake sweeteners are so hyper sweet that we tend to need more sweetness to satisfy our craving. Does that make sense?
No, that totally makes sense. I mean, I've definitely gone through periods of my life where I was doing like diet sodas and things like that. And you never satisfy the actual sweet tooth. You just want more and more and more. And it's a never ending cycle.
If you want to make one change that's better for your health, maybe after the sleep, get rid of the artificial sweeteners.
Well, I think savory also for me is like fat, and like adding like butter to a sweet potato, actually, like really small things like that just really help me. It just doesn't feel so like empty.
So sometimes when people's sugar cravings are out of hand, I notice that they're waking up and having a fruit smoothie in the morning, and then they're snacking on vanilla yogurt with granola. So while these are quote unquote healthy foods and they're nutritious foods, they're just having a lot of sugar. So they're constantly tasting that sweet, and their taste buds are then craving more of that sweet. Right. So instead, when you feel like your sugar cravings are out of hand, shift the focus to more savory days. And what I mean by that is making your meals savory based versus sweet. So for a few days, maybe you have hard-boiled eggs with half an avocado for breakfast. And, you're snacking on some cut-up veggies with hummus, nuts, olives. More of those savory, fatty foods that are actually really satiating can really help.
Yeah, I think that's a good word for it. It's like more satiating.
And that feeling lasts longer, right?
Yeah.
Like you mentioned putting butter on the sweet potato. Diet culture would tell you, oh my God, no, you can't add butter. But
right.
That little bit of butter might actually really satisfy you, and then you're not going to turn to something else later in the evening.
Exactly.
What's so bad about a little bit of a chocolate chip cookie? The last thing you really want to think about here is just be kind to yourself. So if you do have a day where you just, for lack of better words, ate like shit, what happened that day? The next day, instead of continuing that train, hop back on, eat the foods that make you feel good, allow the rooms for those less nutritious foods because you enjoy them. But get curious. Did you not get enough sleep the night before? Were you in a fight with someone so you were sad? Something happened at work that day so you were really frustrated. Find out what those emotions were going on. Figure out better ways to honor them, rewrite that routine, get into that habit loop. So don't just think, in the moment that you're going to be able to be like, hey, I should go for a walk. No, have a plan that when that emotion arises, you do go for a walk. So being really curious and then being kind. We talked about getting rid of that black and white thinking.
I feel like just trying to reframe all of our relationships with food and diet culture and all the things we've been taught, and trying to kind of unlearn a lot of the things that I feel like society has taught us, or at least me, over the years.
Oh, all of us. So it is about unlearning those things, like unlearning that food isn't good and bad, right? It's just food. There's no moral component. But also then learning that your body can tell you what it needs. So listening to it and how you can actually honor that, right? Mindful eating, people always say, oh, if I ate whatever I wanted, it would be cheeseburgers and pancakes and French fries. No, it wouldn't. Because if you were actually listening to what your body needed, you don't feel amazing after a weekend of that.
No.
You feel amazing after a weekend of really nutritious foods, and you didn't eat till you were too full. And then you also had a scoop of ice cream because it was summer and it was nice.
Right.
And there was no guilt. You had the ice cream and you moved on. You built a bridge.
Totally. So true. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I think everyone at home is going to appreciate this conversation, I hope, and it can be helpful. The kind of good thing about what's going on in the world right now is we are all kind of experiencing just such an unsettled sort of the stress and the anxiety and the lack of routine. We're kind of all in the exact same boat. So I feel like I'm trying to find ways to adopt a healthier lifestyle and way of dealing with the stress and what's going on in the world. So I hope that if anyone else is feeling the same way that I'm feeling in terms of what I'm turning towards, hopefully this can be helpful. Thank you so much, Marissa.
Definitely. Thank you for having me.
All right, everyone. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I really enjoyed creating it for you. Having this conversation with Marissa was helpful to me and kind of helpful to just speak about it in general. And I think, like I said in the beginning of this video, I think my relationship with food and my body and wellness is something that's always going to be evolving and changing, and I'm always trying to get better at it. But let me know in the comment section if you enjoyed this video. Let me know what other videos you would like to see like this. I feel really lucky that I have access to people like Marissa and experts and people who are willing to come onto this channel and have this conversation with me. It's really great, and I love sharing it with all of you, and I hope that you find it helpful. Make sure to subscribe to this channel. Make sure to go and follow Marissa, and I'll see you guys soon.